Hi, I'm Marin Still, and this morning I spent 14 minutes trying to make my face look like a version of my face that does not actually exist. Not a filter exactly, more like a set of very specific small adjustments. Slightly brighter here, slightly slimmer there, a version of me that my phone has decided is more correct than the one I woke up with. And the entire time I was doing it, some part of me knew it was absurd, but I kept going, because the standard exists now. And once a standard exists, your face measures itself against it automatically, whether you want it to or not. That feeling, the quiet daily awareness that your face is being measured and found slightly insufficient, is not a social media invention. It is not a filter problem. It is not even a modern problem. Hi, I'm Marin Still, and beauty standards have been making humans do genuinely unhinged things to their bodies for as long as we have existed. The specific unhinged things have changed. The underlying mechanism has not moved at all. And some of what your ancestors did in the name of beauty would make your average cosmetic surgeon look at them and say, "I have concerns." Stay with me. It gets weirder. Let's start with the basic question that nobody asks. Why do beauty standards exist at all? Not what they are. Why they exist. What function they serve in a community. The evolutionary psychologist Nancy Etkoff at Harvard Medical School spent years researching this question, and what she found reframes everything. Beauty signals, she argues, are fundamentally about biological fitness, health, reproductive viability, group membership. But here is the part that matters. What counts as beautiful is not determined by nature alone. It is determined by the group. The community decides what markers signal belonging, status, and desirability, and then enforces those markers through social pressure, reward, and exclusion. Which means every beauty standard in history, including the ones that look completely insane from the outside, made perfect internal logic within its own community. The standard was not about objective attractiveness. It was about proof of membership, about demonstrating that you belong to this group and not another one, about showing that you had endured what the group required you to endure. Let's start with teeth, specifically with filing them. The practice of deliberately sharpening or filing human teeth into points has been documented across cultures in Southeast Asia, Africa, and pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. The Mentawai people of Indonesia practice it to this day. Archaeologists have found deliberately modified teeth at sites across the ancient world dating back thousands of years. In some cultures, pointed teeth signaled beauty. In others, they signaled status. In others, they indicated spiritual connection. The process, done without anesthesia using stones or metal files, was painful enough that it served a dual purpose. It made you look beautiful by the group's standard, and it proved you were tough enough to endure the standard. The beauty and the endurance were the same message. The anthropologist Laurel Kendall at the American Museum of Natural History documented similar dual-function body modification practices across multiple cultures where the pain itself was the point, not incidentally painful. Necessarily painful, because something that costs nothing signals nothing. The sacrifice proved the commitment, and commitment to the group's aesthetic standard was commitment to the group. Now let's talk about necks, specifically about making them longer. The Kayan Lahui women of Myanmar, the group most commonly photographed in Western media under the reductive label of long neck women, begin wearing brass coil rings around their necks from approximately 5 years of age. The coils are added gradually over years. The visual effect is a dramatically elongated neck. The actual mechanism is not neck elongation at all. It is the gradual depression of the collarbones and ribs downward, creating the appearance of length. The rings, once started, cannot simply be removed. The muscles that would normally support the head and neck have not developed normally. The modification is not cosmetic in the way we use that word today. It is structural. Researchers studying the practice, including anthropologist Sandra Dudley at the University of Leicester, who worked extensively with Kayan communities, found that within the community, the rings were not primarily experienced as uncomfortable or extreme. They were experienced as beautiful, as markers of identity, as connection to ancestry and group membership. The outsider's horror at the practice was as culturally specific as the insider's pride in it. Now, let's talk about something that will genuinely surprise you. Lead. For roughly 2,000 years, across ancient Rome, Renaissance Europe, and Edo period Japan, One of the most fashionable cosmetic products available was white lead paste, cerussa in Latin, oshiroi in Japanese, a compound of lead carbonate applied directly to the face to achieve the fashionable pale complexion associated with aristocratic indoor life, the signal that you were wealthy enough to not work outside. The Romans knew it was dangerous. Ovid wrote about it. Medical writers warned about it. It caused hair loss, skin damage, neurological symptoms, and people kept using it for 2,000 years because the standard existed, and the standard required the pale face, and the pale face required the lead, and the social cost of not meeting the standard was greater in the daily calculus of the people using it than the physical cost of meeting it. The archaeologist and historian Philippe Charlier, who has analyzed cosmetic residues from archaeological sites across Europe, found lead concentrations in the skeletal remains of fashionable women that tell the story of a lifetime of deliberate poisoning in service of a beauty standard that no longer exists. Now let's talk about skulls, because it turns out teeth and necks and lead are not the most committed thing humans have done in the name of beauty. Artificial cranial modification, the deliberate reshaping of the skull during infancy, when the bones are still soft, has been documented on every inhabited continent. Practiced by the Chinookan peoples of the Pacific Northwest, by ancient Egyptians, by Huns across Central Asia, by pre-Columbian cultures across South America. In each case, the infant's head was bound, pressed, or shaped over months and years to achieve a particular skull form, elongated, flattened, or rounded, depending on the culture's specific standard. The bioarchaeologist Vera Tiesler at the Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán has studied modified skulls from Maya sites extensively and found that cranial modification was so widespread in certain communities that an unmodified skull would have marked its owner as an outsider. The modification was not the extreme choice, it was the default. The unmodified skull was the unusual one, which means the parents doing this to their infants were not doing something cruel in the context of their community. They were doing the necessary thing, the thing that would allow their child to belong, to be recognized, to be considered beautiful by the only standards that mattered, the standards of the group they lived in. And here is where MS needs you to sit with something. Because what I just described, a parent doing something uncomfortable to a child so that the child will meet the group's beauty standard and be accepted, is not a practice that ended with the ancient Maya. We do not bind skulls, but the mechanism is the same. The standard exists. The group enforces it. And the cost of not meeting the standard, the social cost, the belonging cost, is weighed against the physical, or financial, or psychological cost of meeting it. Every generation, every culture, always. The evolutionary psychologist David Buss at the University of Texas argues that the specific content of beauty standards changes constantly across cultures and time periods, but the structure underneath never changes. There is always a standard. The standard always signals group membership and status. The standard always requires some form of cost or sacrifice to achieve, and the people within the standard almost never experience it as extreme, because inside the group, the standard is simply what beautiful means. This is the thing about the Kaon neck rings and the filed teeth and the lead face paste and the shaped skulls. From the outside, from a different cultural context, they look like obvious madness, clearly harmful, obviously arbitrary. Why would anyone do that? But the women of Renaissance Europe, using lead on their faces, were not thinking about lead. They were thinking about pale skin, about aristocratic signals, about being considered beautiful in their specific world. The same way you are not thinking about the global supply chain behind your SPF moisturizer. You are thinking about your skin. The standard is always invisible from inside it. So here is the modern slap, because I want you to think about what you did to your face or your body this morning. Not to shame it, to see it clearly for what it is. The contour that reshapes what your cheekbones look like. The filter that adjusts your skin tone. The posture you adopt in photographs that is not your natural posture. The angle you learned makes your jaw look sharper. None of those are free choices made in a vacuum. They are responses to a standard that your community, your specific cultural group, your specific historical moment has decided is what beautiful means right now. And you are paying the cost of meeting it. In time, in money, In the quiet background awareness that your actual face is not quite the face. The KN woman adding another ring would understand exactly what you are doing. The Roman woman mixing her lead paste would recognize the calculation. The Maya mother shaping her infant's skull was doing the math that every person in every culture has always done. What does it cost me to belong here? The answer changes every generation. The question never does. Hi, I'm Marin Still, and now, you can never unknow this.